Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechtas Yevamot daf Samach Vav. We are going to begin on Samach Vav Amud Aleph by the new parak, the Mishnah. Almana Kohen Gadol, or for that matter, Grusha B'Chalutza Kohen Headed, which we said these are cases of Chayvi Lavin, which are prohibited marriages, even though we do paskin that Kedushin is Typhus B'Chayvi Lavin, even though there are shitas that disagree with that. So imagine you had this forbidden relationship. Now, hechnisalo avde malog v'avde tzayin barzel, and this woman brings in slaves, and these servants are, some of them are nichse malog, and some of them are nichse tzayin barzel. Now, nichse tzayin barzel is property that's assessed and written in the ksuba. So in this, the husband has rights to it completely. During the marriage, and of course, if afterwards the husband is divorced, he divorces his wife or he dies, so it goes to her at the assessed value, and therefore the gains or losses will be on him, and this is why it's called son barzel, like it's sheep that's iron, which is metal, which is not flexible. It remains the same value, even if the price goes up or down. So you pay the amount as it was at the time of the marriage. As opposed to if she brings in Nechsi Malug is not assessed or written into the Ksuba. The husband only has rights to the Peros, but the field is hers. And therefore, again, at the time of death or divorce, so she always was the owner of the land. So if it went up or down, it's on her. It says Rashi, she keeps it for herself. The husband eats the fruits. However, the principle, the land itself, is hers. And therefore, again, as we'll see, the profits and losses are on her. So that's the difference between Nechtzit Son Barzel and Nechtzit Malug. They could be the same items, and Eved could be either one. It depends if it was stipulated, assessed, and put in the ksuba, then it's considered nechset son barzel, and it's locked in, and he has ownership, some elements of ownership over everything. So therefore, if it goes up or down, it's assessed on how it was from before. It's almost like a futures contract. And when it comes to nechset son nechse malug, all he has is rights to the fruits while he's married to her. So with that said, we can understand this Mishnah a little bit better. That if she brings in these things, so Avdi Malug, which if it's Nechsi Malug, it's really hers, so Yoichel B'Truma. So they're not allowed to eat Truma, these Avadim. And the reason is because it's hers. And just like there's a problem with her because she's a Chalala, I was going to ask this question, but there's a few answers, but Pashup Shat is that she's not allowed to eat Truma, so her servants are also not able to eat Truma. However, Avdei Tzon Barzel Yoichu. However, when it comes to the servants where it's Tzon Barzel, which is on him, so he's a Kohen, he's allowed to eat. He's not a Chol, she's a Cholala. But since it's Nechse Tzon Barzel, so those possessions are considered to be like his at the time during the marriage, and therefore you can eat Truma. Now, Ve'elohin Avdi Mulug. And this is based on the chiluk. When it comes to Nechse Mulug, since it's hers, Imesu Mesu Loh, Ve'im Hosiru Loh. That if, he dies, so it'll be her loss, or it'll be, if there's a gain, it'll be her gain. Alva Bishu Chai B'Mazonos son, even though it's true that there's a Chiyam Mazonos, her Elu Yoichu B'Truma. They're still hers, and therefore they're not able to eat Truma. Even though, again, the husband has some obligation to take care of these Avadim. Now, Ve'elohin Avdi Son Barzel was the case of Son Barzel, which really has like him, he's the owner. Mesu lo, V'im Hosir lo. It'll be either the husband's loss or the husband's gain. Hoyel V'chai B'Achriyusan, since he's Chai B'Achrayus, because if it goes up or down, it's on him. So they're allowed to eat Truma in that case. Now, that is a case of a sinful marriage. However, in non-sinful, regular marriages, for example, a Bas Yisrael Shnisas L'Kayin. So while she's a Bas Yisrael, she's not allowed to eat Truma. But when she gets married, we know she can eat Truma. Therefore, V'Chnisal Avadim, Ben Avdi Mulug, Ben Avdi Tzayin Barzel, Hari El Yochel B'Truma. Once she's married, she can eat Truma, and therefore, whether it's his or hers, obviously, the Nechse Tzayin Barzel can, those avadim you could eat, they could eat truma, but even the nechse malug is the chiddush. Even though it's hers, but now that she's a bas Yisrael, but she married a Kohen, so you're allowed to eat truma. Ubas Kohen Shenisan Yisrael, which works the opposite. While she is a bas Kohen, she's been eating truma. But when she gets married, and now she's married to a Yisrael, she cannot eat truma anymore. Therefore, b'chnisel avadim ben avdi malug ben avdi tzayin barzel hari elu yochel b'truma. So the chiddush is even the nechse malug, which is hers, she can't eat truma because she's now married to a non-Kohen. So too the avadim. Okay, fine. So on this, the Gemara asked the question: "V'avdi malug will yoichel b'truma." We said that the avdi malug, so they're not allowed to eat. They cannot eat truma. In the case of a Kohen gadol to an almana, a Kohen hedget to a gerusha, a mai. Why would we not allow it? Why don't we say that it's a good kinyan? Why don't we say that they're somewhat married? Desanya. If you have a kohen that marries a woman, the kana avadim and also slaves, that not only can she eat truma, but also her servants. So who yoichel bo? So in that situation, who yoichel bo? They can eat. Not only that, but even if the servants somehow also own servants, that they could also eat truma. Kinyan kasbo. Those are extra words. What is kinyan kasbo? Who yoichel? Ki kinyanoi shekana kinyan oichel. Who yoichel boy? Kinyanu shekana kinyan oichel. A kinyan that was kind of another one. No, it's an eved who you're kind who is kind of another eved. They could also eat. So the question is, why don't we allow these avadim to be able to eat truma if the kohen marries her and she's allowed to eat truma? So we should say also they're allowed to eat truma. So that's the question. Okay. And Rashi actually asks this question of an Eved who's kind of an Eved. Says Rashi in Timer, Masha kana Eved kana Rabo. Like, what do you mean? Whatever an Eved is kinda, it's really belongs to the master. My istok kol urvinhu mishkachas l'kain shenasnu lo Eved mana almanash she'ein lo Rabo reshusbo. You can actually stipulate, I'm giving you money, and whatever you buy, I will have no rights over it. So if you made that stipulation, that's the only time an Eved could actually own another Eved. Or at least that's the example Rashi gives. But anyway, we're still stuck to our question. Why don't we allow, if it was Nechse Malug, why don't we allow these Avadim of which are Malug, why do we not allow them to be able to eat Truma? So Gemara gives three answers. Kol oichel meichel, kol she'enu oichel enu meichel. Since the Almana can't eat, so her Avadim too are not allowed to eat. Now she's a Chalola in this prohibited marriage. And since it's a prohibited marriage, so she's not allowed to eat, and therefore also her avadim are not allowed to eat. And that's the reason why, again, we're talking about a kohen gadol. It's a chayvi lav to marry an almana. Volo, is that true? Is that not the case? Is that so? They were saying only time an eved can eat is only if she can eat. Vari oral. How about when it comes to someone who is an oral? That what? Says Rashi, kohen oral, einu oichel. So he's not allowed to eat because he's an oral. He didn't have bris milah. However, avadav oichlin. However, his servants are allowed to eat. So we see that's not necessarily the case. Furthermore, the whole hatameim she'enu oichlin machilin. Let's say a person is tamei. So while you're tamei, you can't eat truma. You have to wait until you're there of shemesh and everything. But during that time, your avadim could still eat. So it doesn't seem to be correct. When it says no, Hasam over there, Pumaihu Ka'iv Luhu. Over there, his mouth hurts them. What does that mean? Kalemer mechusrei takantahim. They're missing some type of a remedy. In other words, they're waiting to either have bris milah or they're waiting to become tahar. However, the truth is, if they become masakin, they could taka eat at that point. When it comes to almana, she nasas chalala. She's now a chalala. Ein lo tikkun olamis. That's it. You're a chalala. If you're tameh, you can become tahar. If you're an oral, you could have a bris milah. But if you're a chalala, that's it. Nothing else can happen. Therefore, in that situation, when you're a chalala and you can no longer eat truma, also your avadim are not able to eat truma. How about, again, by the case of a mamzer? Says Rashi, a bas Yisrael shenisas l'kohen. So a bas Yisrael married a kohen, which is fine. V'yol the bas, and they gave birth to a daughter, which means she's a bas kohen. V'habas nises l'mamzerim, and that daughter married a mamzer. V'yol the bain, and gave birth to a son. Umesa, and she dies. V'haben kaim, and this child is alive. Bahari aim imo ashes kohen ochelas. So the grandmother, who is an ashes kohen, can eat bishvilo truma liachar misas bala, after the kohen died. Lefi sheish lazera and a kohen. So we see she can still eat, but her grandson cannot eat. So Ravina says like this. So that's again we do see these circumstances like a mamzer. So Ravina kinyan oichel kaimer, kinyan oichel meichel, shenu oichel enu meichel. So in other words, just change the language a little bit over here. They're talking about a kinyan oichel kaimer that has to do with a kinyan through being able to marry someone who is married with someone who has an eved, which is a kinyan. So if you have a kinyan oichel meichel, shenu oichel enu meichel. In other words, we're specifically talking about an eved. We're talking about a kinyan. We're not talking about. You're right. There may be times where a parent or a grandparent is allowed to eat, but not the grandchild under certain circumstances. If he's a mamzer, but that's not what we're talking about. And you're right. Sometimes one can eat and the other one can't. But we don't find this when it comes to a kinyan. When it comes to an eved, the din is if you cannot eat, then your eved can't eat. If you can eat, then your eved can eat. So we're sticking with that answer. Answer number 2. Rav Oimer, midaraisa meichel achli. You're right. Even though we're talking about a woman who is a halala, we're still going to allow her to be able to eat truma. So then why would the avadim not be able to eat truma? So the reason is the Rabbanan who de gazerbu. The Rabbanan made a gazer against her that we don't allow her to eat. Kadesha timer, so that this almana will say, Ani eni oichelas. The rabbis are not letting me eat truma. Also, avdi eni oichlin. They're not even letting my own servants eat truma. Zainahi etzlai. They're treating me like I'm a zaina. Hilkach asil afuka. I'm going to end up leaving this marriage, which is what we want. We don't want her to remain in this marriage because it's a forbidden marriage. So therefore, we're going to make it difficult for her to want to be in this relationship by saying you cannot eat truma and your avadim cannot eat truma. Even though you're right, Mikra Din, maybe they should be allowed to eat truma. Doesn't mean that Mikra Din, she's allowed to eat truma because she's a halala. But even the avadim Mikra Din should be allowed to eat truma. But we don't allow them to eat truma, midrabanan. So again, since she's married to a Kohen Gadol, fine. Okay, that's that. Ravashi Omer Gezer Shematachel La'achar Misa. The issue is maybe we're geyser, maybe they'll continue to eat La'achar Misa after her husband died. Now she's married to a Kohen, and the only reason why her avanim should be able to eat is because she's married to this Kohen. But once he dies, so then we're concerned that they may continue to eat. So in a normal situation, we're going to say if a non-Kohen woman marries a Kohen, we're never going to allow her to eat truma because maybe when her husband dies, she'll continue to eat. No, we're not going to make such a gezerah. We understand that after Misa, she cannot eat truma. But while she's married, she can eat truma. So why would we say the same thing when it comes to this Eved, we don't want, again, she's a chalala. She cannot eat truma. The question is, why can't her avadim eat the truma? And the answer is, because we're concerned that if her husband dies, then they're going to continue to feed the avadim truma. Why would you think that? We don't make such a gezerah elsewhere. We're talking about Ba'almana Kohenes. We're talking about the widow. She was actually already a Kohenes, which means before she was married, she was allowed to eat truma because by virtue of being of her father. The asil l'urye, she may come with the following rationalization: I was originally able to eat truma before I got married because I was married. I was a bas kayin, so I ate my father's house. Then what happened? Inatzmile lahai. So I'm married to this guy, the second marriage. So I became an almana, and now I'm married to this kohen gadol. Achabet truma de gavroi. I should be able to eat truma because of my husband. V'hashta hadri lamilsi kamaisa. And now it goes back to its original status. However, lo yada de mikara lo shavisa l'nafsha chalala. She's not going to realize that before she was not a chalala. V'hashta shavisa l'nafsha chalala. When she married the kohen gadol, she actually became a chalala. So since she married a kohen gadol in her second marriage, the avadim are eating because of the husband, but she became a chalala, and when he dies, the avadim cannot eat truma anymore. Okay. Where it says 1 second. Tenach almana kohenes almana bas Yisrael ma'ikol meimar bel menusa lo pligi rabbanan. So he says when it comes to almana, the rabbanan make a little plug. They don't make any distinctions. Question 5. Almana kohen gadol adi malug lo yachu b'truma mehema tamim shema gemara the rabbanan gazu shel yitzaychel ha'almana es abadeha. Why can't she feed her servants? So we said there's 3 answers, but this is the last 2. And the answer is, question 5, either in order that she should think I'm a zayna, I'm being treated like a zayna, she's going to leave the marriage. I can't even give truma to my slaves. Also, atu almana bas kayin. We're concerned when we're talking about an almana bas kayin. The moira heter la'achal af acher misas hakayin gadol. She'll say, well, I remember when I was an almana, and I went back to my father's house. Even though I was a widow, I was able to eat truma because I went back to my father's house. Oh yeah, and I got married to a kohen gadol, and now now that my husband died, I should be able to, just like before, be able to eat truma. But she doesn't realize, you know what? You weren't allowed to eat truma because you are a halala, and maybe the avadim. Okay, the whole question is she's not going to think that she could eat truma after the kohen gadol dies, her second husband. But she'll think that the avadim can eat. She'll say, oh, I had slaves, and the slaves are always able to eat truma, either because once I became an amana the first time, I ate it because of my father, who was a kohen. So now the second time should be the same thing. My avadim should continue to eat. But it's not true. Not allowed to, because she became a chalala. When she's not allowed to eat, he can't eat it. The avadim can't eat either. Okay. Fine, we make a little plug. Now, Itmar, now the Gemara says like this. We learn like this. Hamachneses shumabal. Let's say a woman brings evaluated property to her husband, namely Nichset Soin Barzel, which Nichset Soin Barzel, the ownership is his, it's his, so profits and losses are in his head. So he and let's say they're getting divorced. So she brought it into the marriage, but he had control and achrayas on it. So she says, I want to be able to take the item back, the kli itself. Because I understand it was yours, you brought to the marriage, but because I have achrayas on it, I'm going to give you its value. So the question is, hadin imi, who gets to keep the belongings in that situation? Who gets the actual object? Does she get it, or does he have a right just to say no? I'm just going to give you back its value. So Rabbi Yehuda says hadin imah. The din is with her, namely that she can actually take the vessel in herself. Reb Ami oimer hadin imo. It's up to him. Therefore, if he wants, he could keep the item and give her its value. So Rabbi Yehuda oimer hadin imo. Why can she do it? After all, isn't it considered nichset son barzel? He's the one that is responsible. Mishum shvach beisaviha. didahavi, because there's this concept of shvach beisavia, that this is something which is connected to the father. It has intrinsic value of sorts because it was connected to the family. So therefore, because of that, she has rights to get it back. Rav Ami Omer Hadin Imo Kivani Omer Mar Imesu Mesulo Vimosira Hosilo Hoyabachabyachorusan Yoichlu. Based on our Mishnah seems very clear that the din should be that he gets to keep it, and he just gives the value because it's on him, the achrayas. So Rav Safra Samika Tani. So Rav Safra says, does it say Vehein Shalo? Hoyel v'chai b'achariusan katani. Hoyel mlavdi deininhu. Doesn't say it's his. It just says that the achrayus is on him. So that's not necessarily a proof. Anytime that, let's say, there's chai b'achariusan, automatically means you can eat truma because it's connected to him, which is how we understood in the Mishnah. But we learn elsewhere, Yisrael shesachar para mikoyin. Let's say you have a Yisrael that rents out a cow from a kohen. Harizu yachlena karshini truma. So you're allowed to feed it karshini truma. You can feed it food which is truma. Kohen shesachar par Yisrael. If let's say you have a kohen that rented out a cow from Yisrael, again because it belongs to the kohen, so you can still feed it truma. Kohen shesachar par Yisrael afa pishim mazona sehel, even though you have to feed it, lo yachlenu karshini truma. So again, we see that it's totally, even though you have a chayiv achrayus on feeding it, that doesn't mean you can eat truma. So it's a question. There's a tizbra. Nihi nam ne'machayiv b'gneva v'aveda. I understand that if you're the one who is renting an object, so we see in Perka Mafkid B'Matzia that you're mechuyev in if it gets stolen or lost. But be'oinseha b'chashcha uvin nifchas domeha mi machayev. In, let's say, for example, in something which is beyond your control, in oinus, or for example, it goes down in value, you're not going to be chayev. So the reality is, you can't compare it, because even though you have certain chiyuvim as a renter, there is chayiv achriyusan, but it's not on the same level of what we're talking about by nechsei tzon barzel. So certainly, even if you would not be able to give it, the kohen would not be able to give it truma because it doesn't belong to you. Halodamia el seifa. What is the seifa of there? Yisrael shisham para mikoyen. Let's say Yisrael who gave value from a kohen. So in that situation, says Rashi, bedomim kishisachra himenu, when you rented it out, so you assessed and valued how much this actually was. And basically you said, if it goes up or goes down, it's going to be on you. So in that case, liyachlenu karshini truma. Then you cannot feed it karshini truma. Avol kayin shesham par Yisrael yachlenu karshini truma. So we find that in support to what we're saying, that if in fact you make the stipulation, you say whatever it is, like it's on you, all of it's achrayus, if it goes up or down, so then in that situation, Kohen is allowed to give it karshini truma, because as we see, it's almost as a raya, we brought zakasha, that when a person is able to eat, a person has a full achrayus, then in fact you can bring truma. Yosef, Rabbi Yosef, Bishul Perke, the Rav Nachman, and Yosef Kaimer, Tanig Bas Rabbi Yehuda, the Tanig Bas Rav Ami. So even we have this machlokus, who does it belong to? Does the husband get to keep it and give the value, or does the wife get it? So we have brises to support each opinion. Tanig Bas Rav Ami. First of all, we're going to show the support to Rav Ami that actually the din is imo with the husband, as we say. Avdit Sain Barzel. Let's say when it comes to a slave, which is Sain Barzel, which again she brings in, but it's something which is stipulated, which means he's the one that owns it. Yoitzin Mishin Ba'ayin La'ish. This Eved will go out with Shein Ba'ayin if, let's say, the owner blinds the man's eye, this Eved's eye, because he of a Lola Isha. Why? Because he's the one that has complete achrayus on this Eved. It says Rashi, not the woman, im simta, eno dolavdi dahu. It's not considered to be hers. When it's Son Barzel, even though she brought it into the marriage, but it's considered to be like his during the marriage, and therefore it's so much so that if he blind the eye, then the Eved goes free. If she did, the Eved will not go free. So we see again, the strength that really hadin imo, that therefore it makes sense that he should be the one that keeps the kli and just gives gives its value. Talking about Rabbi Yehuda, on the other hand, we have a support to Rabbi Yehuda that hadin imo, as it says hamachneses shum hobala. Let's say a person again brings nichzitzon barzel into the relationship. Yimratza habal limchor lo yimchor. He's not allowed to sell it. Now, why is he not allowed to sell it? If he has ownership, it must be because it's really hers, right? And there's shvach beisavia. Below od elafil hichnas lashum mishalo. Even if he brings it something from his own, imratza habal limchor yimchor. He's also not allowed to sell it. Says Rashi, she'im yigar shena titol kailal. Well, as Rashi says, because she gets the kli back. So it's a right to Rabbi Yehuda. Machur shneim. Let's say both of them sold it. Rashi says ozeh lefar nasa. And so Rashi says urcha de milsa naka she'ein adam meicher kli tashmishu el muzainis. The only reason why they sold this is because they needed food. So zeh hayamaisa lefnei Rav Shem Gamliel. This actually the story happened. Yomer habal v'omer habal moitzi miyad halukuchais. And they said that the Baal should take it out of lukuchais. Says Rashi, loma boy. The imachar who, if he sold it below daita without her consent, umeso girsha, let's say they got divorced, that she can get it back. Elafil me sahi, even let's say she dies, who moitzim yad lukuchos, so he can take it out of the hands of the lukuchos. The machira la machiri havi. It's not a good sale. You're not allowed to do it. Kol zman she kayemes, provided she's still alive. So a person's not allowed to do such a sale. Even if, let's say, if he did it or she did it. Omer Rabba, Omer Rav Nachman, halacha Rabbi Yehuda. In fact, the halacha, l'maisa, l'maskana, is like Rabbi Yehuda, and therefore, hadin ima. The din is with her. Amrli Rabbi Rav Nachman, I was saying kabbalah Rav Ami. I've heard that the halacha is not like Rabbi Yehuda, it's like Rav Ami. To Avgad is saying kabbalah Rav Ami, even though you say the halacha is in fact like Rav Ami. Mistaber taimad Rabbi Yehuda. Even though maybe normally Taki would say this, however, the halacha is going to make Rabbi Yehuda mishum shvach beisavi, as we said, because it's something, a precious kli, it's something which is of value, and therefore she gets the kli back. So we have the following story of a woman, da'ayule legavra itztala, that she brought to this man a cloak, the milta b'ksubasa, and it was a matter connected to the ksuba. So shachav. So he died. Shakul Yasmi, so the Yisamim took it. Uparsua a misna, and spread out this cloak on the mace. Amarava Kanya misna. They said that the mace is kind of this. It says Rashi, Tachrichi HaMace, because Tachrichi HaMace are Isuri Hana Hain. Once it becomes Tachrichim, you cannot derive any benefit from it. Kehektish de gomer sham ego arufa. Amrle nanye bered Rav Yosef bered Rav Kahana v'yomer Rav Omer Rav Nachman halacha Rabbi Yehuda. But what do you mean? I thought the halacha is Rabbi Yehuda, that it's hers. So how could we say that it belongs to him and the tachrichim? So Amrle milo moder Rabbi Yehuda. Doesn't Rabbi Yehuda agree? Even though it's hers, the mechuser guvaina. V'kivan the mechusar govaina, that's it's mechusar govaina. It's lacking her collecting it, and since it's lacking her collecting it, it's b'rshusi koi. It's like in his rishus. Says Rashi, da'im nensu o nevdu chayv me'acharusan. Because we know if, let's say, it gets lost, so the husband is required to. It's on him. So b'kivan de rishus yasmin, since it's in the rishus of the orphans. Asi hektish the aftishua yasmi mafkile l'shibuda v'yoyv demei. So at that point, because they did what they did, they just give its value. Rabba tamei dima Rabba hektish chametz v'shechor mafkin midei shibu. And this we had many times. Let's when it comes to chametz, you have an ovik chachamim shehil b'es Yisrael al chemtzai. So you have a non-Jew that borrowed Yisrael, and he gave him chametz as like a mashkain. So at that time, after Pesach is over, that chametz is asur b'hana. The asur iser chametz mafkil le'lishibuda. The yavi kachavim. And they quote the Gemara in Pesachim, Mutar b'hana, Rabbi Omer mokel lahasam kisharninu etzlo. If let's say it was in the guy's home, then in that situation it's where we say it's mutar b'hana. But if it's not kisharninu etzlo, if it's not by the non-Jew, then it's aser. Shenastu yisoba beisa shel v'kachavim. Then it's not considered to be mechzer gavayu, like a lacking of collections. That's by chametz. Shichur as well, which if a person made a putiki, says Rashi, on top of Samach Zayin Amud Aleph, Yisrael sheshibad avdoi l'bal choiv. So again, you have a bal choiv. So this guy said this servant is going to pay off my loan. The shichru. However, then you freed the lender, the borrower freed him. We say he goes free. He has to collect from another place, because once you freed him, that's it. He's free. Free is free. So therefore, even though the payment was connected to, you can take my slave, but once the slave's free, it's mafki b'di shibud. Also, it only mentions chametz in shichur, or also hektish. So din is also by hektish. If you use hektish, in which it's specifically designated for, again, you owe someone money, and then you're makdish that, so that no longer is connected. It's mafkim b'di shibud. It's not connected to the shibud. Rabbi Yehuda, let's say the woman brought into the marriage two vessels, and their total value is $1,000, 1,000 zuz. B'shavchu, and they went up in value. The amdu al shnei alafim, and now all of a sudden they're worth $2,000. Echad notalto b'ksubata. So one he takes for the ksuba, but echad nosenes damim v'notalta mimnei shvach beisavia. So she could actually compel him to sell her the second vessel at 1,000 zuz, because the shvach beisavia, even though it belongs to him. So my kamashmo and shvach beisavia didahavi ha'amra Rabbi Yehuda chadazimna. We already know that shvach beisavia goes to her, and therefore she can force him to give the value and pay him the 1,000 zuz. So that's only, let's say, what equals that of the ksuba of metan demei umishkolo kamashmon. You would think in this situation not. Says Rashi, el shalohein olamas kamashmon. You think it would be completely his kamashmon. It's not. Question 6. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer hadin imo, and Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Ami Omer hadin imo. Mahu hadin desanya krib Yehuda, or mahadin desanya krib Eliezer. She says like this: Rabbi Yehuda imratza habal limchor liyimchor. So if the Baal wants to sell it, cannot sell it. So we saw proof like that. However, we also saw like Rav Ami, the Avdi Tzayin Barzel Yotzim Mishin V'ayin Leish Avalo Leisha. So we saw these two opinions, with Bryce supporting each one, but again we end up saying halachas like Rabbi Yehuda because shvach beisavia ad kan.